Hmm. We're running all over the place.
Ballpark Nation presents. Welcome to Go Astros, your look at the two-time World Series champions from three guys who have been here since Art Howe had hair.
And welcome everybody to Go Astros. Andy and I are here. And much like the Astros outfield, we're missing a key piece, or three key pieces in their case. Brian's not here, but Andy, we're going to hold it down. 10 of 11, decent weekend, really good week overall. Where are you at?
They're bums. They were 6-0 last week, and they're 5-1 this week. That is a downward trend, friend.
It is a downward trend.
Although I got to say that if you're going to come off a sweep of the Rays that followed a sweep of the Red Sox, great road series, great week, and then everybody in the world saying, and now they're going to get the worst team in baseball, there was nothing more predictable or set up than the Astros losing on Friday night. Because you could see that coming from a mile away. Oh, yeah, of course they're going to lose. Everybody expects them to win. That's just – it's not a thing. They rebounded. They took the series. It was regrettable that you ended up losing a game. You took the season series, I guess, for the White Sox, which everybody does. I would have loved to see the sweep more. I'm not too mad about it, though.
Yeah, I mean, the lack of the sweep is magnified too because the Mariners lost. So looking at a five-game lead going into what's going to be a pretty tough little stretch here over the next 10 games would feel better. Although the Mariners have just as equal a tough stretch, in my opinion, because they're going to get a Dodgers team that's actually playing well again. Overall, though, how are you feeling about the pennant race? I mean, the divisional race, excuse me. But not only that, like the Astros are only 4.5 out of the second seed. Like in all of this, we've sort of forgotten that's in reach as well.
Well, I think since June 1st, the Astros have the best record in baseball. I think that's what I read. So this is a team that is playing well despite some pretty big holes. We were talking offline about what our outfield looks like right now. We haven't had Kyle Tucker since June 3rd or June 6th. I forget which. Either way, it's been more than 2 months for a bone bruise. I'm not going to question the validity of that. Plenty of people are doing that. We'll just, he hasn't been here. We haven't had Justin Verlander since 2 weeks after that. And although he might be coming back Wednesday, it looks like, unless he woke up, realizing he was married to Kate Upton.
Funny tweet that for a team with Mattress Mac as a part of its sort of entourage, we're sure having a lot of sleeping injuries.
I also kind of feel, though, like he could just wake up one day and go, I'm married to Kate Upton. Why am I getting out of bed?
Fair. No, absolutely fair. I mean,
But you have questions of the rotation. You have questions in middle relief, some of those same questions that were at the beginning of the season. And you've got an outfield that's, I would say, is not major league standard right now, and they're still winning games. They basically thumbed their nose at the baseball gods yesterday with that lineup they put out. And I get that Alvarez needs a rest. I get that Bregman is a little bit banged up. I understand the reasoning for it, but that was that lineup yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, it was funny because Jessica and I had to leave the game a little early because of big work commitments, and our plan was to leave. I think our plan was to leave after the 6th, and then she realized who was coming up in the 6th, and she's like, "Let's just get in the car now." Like,
yeah,
what's the point? But I mean, it was funny because in a season that, for as much as, again, like you said, since June 1st, best team in baseball, that has felt relatively unclutch, because I love that we're still living in the emotional hole Brian described since April. Like, no matter what, we don't trust this team, even though they are the best team in baseball since June 1st, and everybody else is afraid. But you needed Altuve and Diaz to win the game, and Altuve and Diaz won the game.
Yep. It's also interesting, you talk about the emotional hole. You go around social media, I don't see a fan base that's really excited about their baseball team. This is right now the best team in baseball is on pace to win 95 games. This will be if that holds, it's going to be the first year since 2014 that we haven't had a 100-game winner. We're not too far removed from having 5 or 6 100-game winners. In 2019.
Yeah.
I forget which year that was. So there's a lot of middling baseball. I've watched Yankees fans stab themselves in the gut a number of times on Twitter this season. Dodgers fans are kind of the same way, although, like you said, they're playing well. The Rangers, that's just we need to have a whole show about that.
Poor guys.
But all these teams that are in contention, are in the top 12 slots in baseball that are playoff teams right now, none of them are just lights out teams. They all have holes. They all have question marks. A team that I worry about out of what's sitting there right now is a team like the Royals, who doesn't know that they're not supposed to be as good as they're playing right now. But the big guns, the big guys, there's just this weird feeling amongst the fan bases that nothing is right. And maybe that's what Rob Manfred's ultimate goal is nothing is right.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is the definition of parity, right? Like, you're going to have everybody playing. Parity doesn't make every team great. It makes every team mid.
Yeah. But going back to the Astros, to be 11 games over 500 right now, considering where we were in April, I mean, that's incredible. And if they had just played the way, if they had played 500 ball during that stretch, we'd be talking about a division that's pretty much clinched.
Yeah, right. I mean, yeah, completely. And I will say this. I, for one, am glad to be done with the Tigers. They, Mitch Haniger notwithstanding, they dominated Seattle. It was like, knowing some Seattle fans, they never thought they were going to win any of those games, even when they were up 2-0 in the 8th inning, because it's just, I don't know, they're scrappy. And like you said, we do have another series with the Royals, and they're not dissimilar to that.
Well, Haniger needs to watch Bull Durham and really go to the Crash Davis school of quotes, because he needs to stop talking to anybody who will listen. I know that's why you put a mic in front of him, because he's going to say something that fires up other teams. But it's one game at a time. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. Sometimes it rains.
Sometimes
Nothing more than that, Mitch, because it never works out.
Total. Yeah, exactly. Looking at the next three, though, we do have a struggling, I wouldn't say struggling, I guess almost to your point, a kind of middle of the road right now, Boston Red Sox team coming in. Don't really know what to make of them. They were really, really hot, and Houston came to them, and one of the rare sweeps we've seen over the last couple of seasons. Overall thoughts on the series coming up?
I would assume the Red Sox are going to be more competitive than they were 10 days ago. The Astros won, that series pretty impressively. I think the first game was 8-4. They won 5-4. They won 10-2. Really dominated, especially Friday and Saturday of that series. The Red Sox issue that series was pitching. They had to throw a bullpen game, and then I think the Sunday game became a bullpen game because of Paxton's calf injury.
Yeah.
I don't know where they are with pitching, but and again, I have this thing that I probably gripe about to you online. Whenever we have a bullpen game pitched against us, you can guarantee we're only going to have 1 or 2 hits. Maybe we win it like we did yesterday, but it's just this kind of thing you grow up expecting, even for the last 7 years, expecting the Astros to do really weirdly against what should be an easier win. The Red Sox have a lot of offensive talent. They're going to score runs. If our pitching shows up, we have Kikuchi going tonight. He's been really, really solid. I would say great if he could finish the 6th inning. Some of that's just been circumstance, but I like the way the pitching lines up with us. They're not going to see Arrighetti. And I'm not picking on Spencer. He's been pretty good the last month or so, but we're getting a better part of the order, better part of the pitching rotation against them. I'd be happy taking 2 or 3. I'd be really happy sweeping, especially knowing the Mariners are playing the Dodgers right now. It should be a chance for the Astros to pick up, to widen their lead by a game or 2.
Yeah, just looking at the overall matchups, I mean, like you said, Kikuchi, who has done everything asked, everything we hoped, everything expected. And then you've got Blanco, who really did bounce back last week from – he'd had a couple of outings in a row where you started to wonder, is the fatigue catching up with him? But he did really, really well. Like I said, Verlander. Back to Arrighetti on Friday night, though, like he got baseballed a bit where like one of the home runs really wouldn't have been a home run anywhere else because we play in a – what do Yankee fans call it? Mickey Mouse Stadium?
Yes.
Is that what we're supposed to call it? Want to talk though a little Alex Bregman. What's weird is okay. So the original story out of that was okay. He's just going to take the weekend off. He doesn't want to play through it anymore. And now it's become, we think he'll be back during the Red Sox series, but he hasn't picked up a ball or swung a bat. What do you think? Are you skeptical?
I mean, normally I wouldn't be, but the way the Astros handle injury and communication around injury, I don't know how you could be anything but skeptical. Kyle Tucker had a bruise that was going to make him day to day. He's now on the 60-day DL or IL like we talked about. Maybe he comes back by the end of this month. That's the best case scenario right now. Verlander slept on his neck and had a neck crick, and he's been out for nearly 2 months. The Astros have a history, and it's not just this year, of the last several years of underreporting, misreporting, not reporting injuries, and they turn into these larger issues. Understanding that you can't predict everything that would happen, but this seems to be a consistent pattern with, I guess the plan is to just downplay injuries so there's no competitive advantage, but they show up at the baseball park and realize that, hey, Bregman's not in the lineup. There's the competitive advantage. So it's not like you're game planning for Alex Bregman or you're game planning for Justin Verlander necessarily.
And it's also like, it's not football. Like Troy Aikman not playing mattered.
That's what I mean. If you can hide, going back, since we are quoting guys from 1994, if you could hide the fact that Emmitt Smith isn't playing up until that time, yes, that's an advantage in football. It's not an advantage in baseball. It just doesn't work out that way, maybe for a starting pitcher. But, so I hope that Bregman is what he's saying is accurate, and I hope that he's back in the lineup tonight. But it's just really weird that they can't communicate what's going on with their players. And this isn't a HIPAA issue.
No, right. I always thought it was. And then I was pointed out that HIPAA doesn't apply to professional athletes.
No, especially when they're talking about their injuries.
Right.
You've kind of let the cat out of the bag at that point. So I'm hoping that I really do hope what they looked at and said, we should win this series even with Bregman on the shelf. We'll let Whitcomb play third. We'll let Dubon play third. We'll get through a series with the White Sox. But we're about to step up in competition. And if you don't think that's against the Red Sox, it certainly is starting Thursday with 7 against the Orioles and the Phillies on the road. Those could be, potentially ALCS and a World Series previews.
Yeah, and the Astros. I think they did win the series against the Orioles this year. Did they not earlier?
They've only played. I don't know. I think we did. Yeah, we did win, but we got 4 in Philadelphia. In Baltimore.
4 in Philadelphia. But then Philadelphia, while struggling, is playing a lot better. It's the same situation that the Mariners are going to face with the Dodgers. So you want to go in there and.
Philadelphia is a great team, especially at Citizens Bank, whatever Eagle Field, wherever they play.
Yeah.
Veterans Stadium, as far as I'm concerned. Although I did watch Ballpark Nation, and I know a lot more about Citizens Bank Park than I did before.
Yeah, and I've gotten a lot of messages like, "Boy, I hate the Phillies, but I might have to go to the game." Well, I get it. It does. So it looks like though, I think you can at this point in the stadium, this point of the season, have a discussion about what the Astros are doing without looking at what Seattle has ahead. And that to me, though, Andy, take yesterday's beatdown notwithstanding, in which was it they started a guy with a 7 ERA. So, of course, Seattle's going to score some runs in Pittsburgh. Mm-hmm. But even Pittsburgh really looked like they were dominating Seattle in that series. Seattle feels exactly like what some of us thought they would be, which is kind of just about a 500 team.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think we said preseason and certainly started ignoring them when the Astros had their early season issues. But the Mariners did nothing to address their offense. They have incredible starting pitching. They've got a really good bullpen, some back-end pieces that any other team in baseball would be happy to have. But the offense is not good. I went back and forth a couple of years ago that, some Mariners fans were Julio Rodriguez is a first ballot Hall of Famer based on 2 months in Seattle in the outfield. He hasn't produced to expectations yet. And yeah, you can have a bad season, and I'm not selling low on Julio Rodriguez right now, but the rest of the team around him just hasn't produced. Ty France is gone. Cal Raleigh, I guess, is their big thumper in the lineup, and he doesn't hit for a lot of average and occasional power, but everything else they do is kind of just like this middling. And I don't want to pick on Jerry DiPoto again. I'm lying. I love picking on Jerry DiPoto. This idea that they're going to win 54% of their games, that's what they're going to do. They're going to win 54% of their games, and it's not going to be enough in a division where the Astros will spend more, in a division where in a normal year the Rangers will spend more. Even the A's seem to be making up some ground on the rest of the division a little bit with nothing but homegrown products. So until they have a sell-off again, I don't know how many people they can seat in Sacramento, so they might not be able to field a full roster. That stadium holds 13. So I mean,
there will be no family passes at the gate, guys. Y'all are
yeah. We know you can have 26 guys in the roster. We only have room for 22. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, guys.
4 of you are going to have to stay in the hotel. So yeah, the Mariners are just they're about a 500 team because they refuse to address their offense and I don't think Teoscar Hernandez is an all-star by any means. I know he's had a great season for the Dodgers, but letting him go for nothing, replacing him with somebody who's done worse, that seems to be the DiPoto way. And I'm starting to see where even Mariners fans are tired of Jerry DiPoto and Scott Servais' smirk. Astros fans have been tired of Scott Servais' smirk since the mid-90s. I'm glad they're finally catching up to the rest of baseball.
Yeah. Now, one of the things, though, that you have to look at when you're starting to project out as we get towards that final month is Seattle does have a much easier strength of schedule than the Astros do. The Astros have a pretty tough one. I think they've really only got 13 games left that you would qualify as easy, 13 of their 39, whereas Seattle has 7 more with the A's and 3 more with the Angels and 7 more with the Rangers. It still feels like the Astros are a much better team and they're going to weather this. Where is your confidence level that the Astros are going to end up winning the division?
Much higher than it was 2 months ago. I can tell you that.
Right.
We have to get through these next 2 weeks. If you get through September 1st and can maintain a comfortable lead and comfortable, 4+ games, I'm liking that. 3+ games is fine. Get through the Red Sox. Like I said, they've got the Orioles and Phillies, and then they've got 4 at home against the Royals, who are hot. And, potentially if you're fighting them for playoff position, they're not going to win their division necessarily. They could catch Cleveland because everybody's kind of bunched up together in the American League.
Mm-hmm.
Then you get a little bit of break against the Reds. They're probably out of it by that point. The D-backs are a wild card team, so they're going to be tough. And then we have our stretch against the A's, 3 against the A's. We've got 7 against the Angels, so a little bit flip-flop there. But we still have a series with the Padres. We still have a series with the Guardians, who might be still fighting for the division lead at that point.
I told friend of the show that does the Dat Hat Chronicles that I was hoping they would just clinch that stuff up by that last weekend. But there's a part of me, though, in my gut that thinks that last week isn't going to matter for the Astros anyway.
Yeah, I was looking at it before we got online this morning. I really don't think that series in September 23rd is going to matter much between the Astros and the Mariners in the grand scheme of things. I think it'll be settled by that point, in which case you're going to see more of the Sugarland Space Cowboys.
Whoa. I actually missed Steve Miller Band, ironically enough, because it took me 3 hours to get from Austin to San Antonio. Now, those of you who are not anywhere near Harrison listening, that's not normal.
So that's a 50-minute drive.
Normally, yeah.
Usually, not even an hour.
We had 2 wrecks in a stalled car and a partridge in a pear tree.
Interstate 35.
Yeah.
Such a well-planned road. Gotta
love it. Overall, we have had some babies play. We've had Whitcomb, we've had Leon, we've had Dispenzio. Any of them stand out that you think are actually going to be long-term solutions in the Astros outfield, or do you feel like we're throwing crap against the wall and see what sticks?
Well, only one of them is an outfielder. Pedro Leon's the only. I know he had some time at middle infield because the Astros were trying to fit him in, and at the point they picked up Pedro Leon, we're looking for a Carlos Correa replacement, so that's why he got some of that play. He's been primarily an outfielder or solitarily an outfielder, I guess, for the last season and a half, 2 seasons. So far, I just looked at this week, but the other 2 are infielders. DeCenzo and Whitcomb are primarily your third base options for next year should Alex Bregman walk. Unfortunately, nothing that we've really seen so far in the major leagues has led me to believe that any of these guys are long-term contributors. And it's such a small sample size. I'm not picking on anybody. Whitcomb has looked fine. DeCenzo had a good first week. The second week has been less good. Pretty bad, actually.
Yeah, the strikeout is also the big concern. You're right.
Well, I mean, as a whole, the last week, the last 7 days, those 3 guys, DeCenzo, Leon, Whitcomb, they're 2 for 24. And those 2 hits belong to Shea Whitcomb on Saturday, I believe. That is with 1 extra base hit and 13 strikeouts.
Yeah. And at least Whitcomb has also walked, I think, in both of his games, which is almost as telling as anything. Yeah.
Whitcomb seems to have a good approach. Again, it's such a small sample size, and you were not playing exactly the best team in baseball this weekend. So it's hard to say. If I look at what we talked about last week with Nash, if I look at, what's the people outside of certain Astros fan accounts are saying, DeCenzo is the best of those 3. He's the guy who I ultimately have the most faith in hitting. He's probably a third baseman by trade, but right now he's learning first base, which is why he's gotten no time on the other side of the diamond. Whitcomb is normally a shortstop, middle infielder, but he can play third base. That's where he was yesterday. I don't want to be this guy. None of them have been terribly impressive. None of them have been. It's not even a Bregman situation where you come up and you go 0 for 36 or whatever it was when he started, where you can see things and it's just not clicking yet. All 3 of them look really, really overmatched a lot of the time. And it's not just strikeouts, it's bad strikeouts. And we've seen plenty of those this year for veterans too, but it's just guys who have no idea what they're doing at the plate and they're being eaten up by major league pitchers. We've said it before in this show. We'll say it again on this show. It is something people would understand. There is such a giant leap between the pitching that you will see in AAA versus the pitching you will see on a consistent basis, even from the worst teams in baseball at the major league level.
Yeah,
ungodly breaking stuff.
The worst team in baseball are still some of the best baseball players you're ever going to see when you think about the sport as a whole, right? Like of course it's going to be better than what they're seeing in AAA.
And to a large part, AAA, like we talked about last week, is guys hanging on, organizational filler, because your best players, especially from a pitching standpoint, are generally at AA. And there's some exceptions to that, obviously, but there's nothing that I've seen in the last 14 days that make me think, oh yeah, this is great. I think DeCenzo is going to get better at first base. I think he is still learning the positions. So when he has a game like he had a couple of nights ago where things are just not clicking right, that's going to get better. He's athletic enough to figure out that position. And as we learned from Moneyball, it's a very easy position to play.
One of the tricky things going forward, particularly when you factor that Kyle Tucker isn't back yet, is the best lineup has both Carantini and Yanier Diaz in it. I mean, first of all, Yanier Diaz, he's really turned it around. I mean, there was at least a little bit of me wondering if last year was just sort of a kind of a one year deal. But it means if you're going to have Carantini and Diaz in the lineup, you're going to have most likely Yanier playing more left. I mean, Jordan playing more left field. Thoughts on him in left field? Does it worry you, or is it at some point we've got to pretend he's not a giant injury risk?
The injuries don't. Any player can get injured at any time. That doesn't worry me as much as maybe it would have. He's got 2 bionic knees. I think every joint on him that's been replaced can be replaced, I believe. But Jordan's going to have to play left field with the lineup that we currently have. You can't have a playoff roster that features Chas McCormick in left field. That's just not a thing that's going to work this year. I don't care about the vibes. I don't care about the fact that he left his number on the dirt in Philadelphia. It's a great moment. Great moment, great pitcher. It does not help him hit in 2024.
Right.
And that's, the reality of the situation is that Jordan's going to play in a playoff situation in left field, even in a big park, based on who we have currently. If you need offense, if you are playing a team where you're going to need all the runs you can get, I would play Yiner at first. I would put Caratini at catcher, and I would DH Jordan if you have to. But there are going to be times where you can't DH Jordan, and you're going to have to play him in left field. And I'm comfortable with that because he'll catch everything he gets to. He makes good throws. He's deceptive. He's got a strong arm, and people don't realize it.
No, I know he's got a hose.
It's just the bad things that happen to Jordan in left field are sometimes really bad. It doesn't play. Caroms don't work out for him sometimes. It's going to happen, but I think you can't take him out of the lineup, and that's where he's going to have to be because other players are going to have to DH periodically.
Yeah, and if you look at some of the possible playoff matchups, they are at least some of them have left fields he can handle. He can handle left field in Boston, right? He can handle left field in a couple other spots. You had mentioned Chas McCormick and the word feels and vibes, and I think you know who I'm going to ask about next because this is what Twitter's talking about this morning. Please explain to everybody why Yuli Gurriel is not a possible solution at first base for the Houston Astros, even if they could acquire him.
I like people. I do. I don't generally just go out of my way to point out, but it's just he's a 40-year-old player that no one else in baseball wants, but we should get him because he's had a good 2 weeks in AAA. He hit his 12th home run getting full-time play in AAA against AAA pitching.
Now,
which
I will say the caveat to being is that the International League is not the Pacific Coast League with balls flying out, but it is still AAA.
But it's still AAA. If he was 35 and you thought you could squeeze out a month of good play out of him, yes. But the Braves haven't been interested in calling him up. Nobody's knocking down the door to pick up Yuli. And the reality is, as much as he was important to the run in 17, to the run in 22, to the streak of ALCS appearances, he's a 40-year-old player who does not field well anymore. And as of the last time he was in the major leagues, could not hit major league pitching on a consistent basis. Yeah. He did not hit well in Houston in 2022. Matter of fact, nobody was really sad that he was gone outside after the 2022 season, outside of, well, we could keep him on the bench and he could be a utility guy.
Yeah. He got hot in the playoffs and that's about it.
And that's great. And we wouldn't have won that year. We wouldn't have won that title without Yuli Gurriel's contributions. But that doesn't buy you cachet for 2 seasons later when you're in your 40s. And this is a Cuban 40, keep in mind. This is not we don't really know.
The range. He's 38 to 44. Let's be honest.
He's been there at least 4 decades is what that's all I'm going to commit to.
Okay. Yeah, sorry, continue.
But, I mean, he is a baseball Hall of Fame level player if you combine his entire career. I don't think he'll ever get that recognition, but he is that level of player if you can take Cuba and add it to everything he did in the majors for 7 years. But he's just not that player anymore. But vibes, man. Oh, he's here before. We tried this earlier this year with Aledmus Diaz. Where is Aledmus right now? Probably booking a flight to wherever he lives because he's not on a major league roster anymore.
Yeah.
It's just players do age out. Having a 40-year-old everyday position player is exceedingly rare. Even at a position like first base, you just don't see it a lot.
Yeah.
There's nothing that he's shown over the last 2 seasons. Last season, he was as bad statistically as Jose Abreu was.
Yeah.
That I'm not exaggerating that. I mean, you look at them, I think they're within a point of each other in a couple
they
of.
Both had a sub 600 OPS last year.
Yeah, I mean, just bad play. That's against major league pitching. Yes, he's doing better against AAA pitching, but he's moved into that range of a 4A player. He can hit guys that are still learning their craft or guys that are hanging on hoping they get called up. He's not a major league hitter anymore. And if he can't field his position well, he wasn't fielding his position well 2 years ago. It hadn't gotten better. I just don't, there's no reason for it other than, well, he was here before and we like him.
Oh, totally. Now let's talk about people who have been before. This will be our last topic of the day. A couple years ago, I guess 5 years ago now, Reed Ryan introduced the Astros Hall of Fame. They might have blew their wad a little bit by inducting 10 players and 10 personalities at one time. I was at the Caminetti and the forgive me for getting his name, but the Spanish broadcasters, Cardenas, his last name, I think.
Renee.
And they didn't. I mean, it was a pretty lackluster, honestly, event that we were watching. Who's next? Because clearly, when it's time for guys in the current run to get in, there's no few number of candidates, right? Like Yuli probably makes the Astros Hall of Fame when it's all said and done. But who would you say in this sort of interim group, or do we just see a couple of years with nobody get inducted?
I mean, first of all, team Hall of Fames are all fan service, so I'm not mad about anybody getting in. I'm not going to ever get upset that somebody got in and only played for the Astros I mean, I guess there's a world where Randy Johnson could get in the Astros Hall of Fame. Played half a season, had an incredible half a season, but played half a season. It's not going to keep me up at night or anything like that. But to your points, when you take the 10 best players in your franchise history and induct them in the first year, everything is going to be less than at that point until you get Altuve eligible. And I don't even know what is eligible. Can they put him in now?
I think that they are. They're actually. There were requirements that I think they've changed, but one of them was like 10 years in an Astros uniform, and that just doesn't work.
Well, that's clearly out the window.
Yeah,
but you're getting down to the guys. I mean, there's some guys in there that are questionable now. Shane Reynolds was a guy I loved to watch pitch, but he was a guy that was barely over 500 as an Astro and had an ERA in the fours.
Yeah,
he's in there.
Is Kevin Bass and Billy Hatcher in there yet? But
that's okay. But that's the level of guys you're going to be talking about next.
Yeah.
I saw some poll, and I don't remember who put it out, and I can't find it on Twitter over the weekend about who should be next. Hunter Pence, Moises Alou. Moises Alou played parts of 3 seasons with the Astros.
And it was very good.
He has the highest batting average in franchise history for a season. Yeah. He was only there for 3 years. And for most people outside of Houston, when they picture Moises Alou, they don't picture him as a Houston Astro.
Unfortunately, they picture him as a Cub because it's the Bartman thing, but yeah.
Right. Maybe 5 fans in Florida picture him as a Marlin. I don't know. But when you've taken your 10 best players, you have to have players of that stature, or at least somewhat close to that. We're in this now middling things of what are fan favorites. And again, this isn't the Pro Baseball Hall of Fame. Nobody should be losing any sleep over this, but we're running out of candidates because realistically, this hasn't been historically the most successful franchise that you've ever seen in baseball.
Especially talking about a franchise which has had 2 really good clumps of time in the early to mid 80s, and then obviously what we're in now, and then some decent time in the mid 90s. But what that means is you're not going to have candidates for some of those years. I mean, who would you put in? If the goal is to induct somebody every year, when you start getting into the 2007 Astros, who do you put in off that team? Right? Like, I mean, does Clemens eventually get into the Hall of Fame? Does Pettit?
Carlos Lee was the other one on the poll. Carlos Lee was he was there longer than Pence or Alou, but he's also a guy that most fans were really, really irritated with because of the conditions and nature of that signing.
Sure. Right. Totally.
Is that a Hall of Famer? I mean, is it just numbers? Is it vibes? Is it what? There's no real criteria. So again, nobody should be losing any sleep over this, but we're getting into not even the B players. We're getting into like the C+ territory of players with these next couple of rounds until you see guys like Correa being eligible, who played 6 years here. You can argue that whether or not that was enough, but he's probably in. Altuve will definitely be in. Bregman will definitely be in. Springer probably will be in, depending how mad he is at the Astros franchise at that point. Man holds a grudge.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, Clemens, in my mind, wouldn't be there because he wasn't here long enough.
Oh, I bet you he gets in, though.
Well, he's not getting any other ones, so,
Yeah.
But,
I bet you there's no way they're going to keep a Houston kid. Like, I think he and Pettit get in for that very reason.
At some point, somebody's going to suggest that Don Sutton get in. He played for a season in Houston, but he's a Hall of Famer in real life, so let's put him in this one too. But maybe his family will show up and we can sell 10 more tickets. I don't know. But it wasn't strategically done where you pace this out. You could have had a nice decade run of these kind of inductions with the right players and the right mix. And maybe you started off with, Biggio and Bagwell go in first thing, but maybe, all right, who are older players that are probably eligible? Great. We'll get Jimmy Wynn in before something happens to him. We'll get Enos Cabell in. I guess he's going to be, eligible. Is he in? He feels like a guy that's going to get in.
I don't think he's in, but he feels like I think he'll get in.
Yeah, because you're going to have somebody because you've said this.
I wonder if we'll get in, like you and I. How cool would
Eventually.
that be?
Eventually, they'll get down to the. It has to go out. The numbers have to run out a certain amount of time. Yeah, there are players now who are playing now that I think are certainly worthy. But there were a lot of dark days in Astros history, and you don't necessarily just need to put a player in every year.
I think they should pick a season ticket holder from those years.
I mean,
thanks for hanging on, buddy.
Yeah, I think I read somebody saying that, it should be limited to 2 players a year and maybe one special contributor, whether it's a manager or front office person or whatever, and that would have been sufficient. And maybe that first year you did like 4. But
like the first year I could have seen like Biggio Bagwell and like Ryan and Mike Scott, like 2 years, to represent the 2 eras and then continue them from now, going forward.
But this is also a franchise that has 12 retired numbers, and up until 2017 had never won anything. What are you retiring those numbers for?
Can we find any of Biggio's specific Sunshine kids to put in the Hall of Fame? I mean, no, maybe we could put Kevin Biggio in there because he seems to always hit well when he's at Minute Maid. I don't know.
I'm still amazed we haven't tried to pick him up.
Because
he's been DFA'd twice this year. I'm amazed that we haven't tried to get him.
Yeah. But let's be honest, of all the dumb suggestions we've seen, I would take him over Yuli Gurriel right now.
Well, yeah, he can at least play first base.
Yeah, and can move. I don't know. Well, we ended this on a grouchy note or a sarcastic note, I should say. But again, your Astros have been the best team since June 1st. They've won 10 of 11. I wonder, though, if you and I are ever going to get out of the emotional hole, or are we always going to be – because we have not been very confident. We'll get down 1 run, and then it's always like, well, there it goes.
Well, I mean, for me, that's a byproduct of starting an outfield of Mauricio Dubon, Chas McCormick, and Jake Myers for what's been mostly the last 2 months. It's not great. So, yes, if Altuve, Bregman, and Alvarez aren't hitting, it does feel kind of – dire at some points during the game. They've overcome that, and it's great that they overcome it. And it is a very talented team. It's a little top heavy, I would say. The bench strength is not what it has been in years past, but this is still a team that is very competitive. As far as my personal emotional hole, talk to me in 2 weeks. Because if we survive these next 2 weeks, I think this is smooth sailing going into the playoffs.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would agree with that too. And I do think the lack of depth at the bench level isn't just because of, lowly rated farm systems and tax barriers and all that stuff. I think it's parity, and I think it's actually what Major League Baseball wants. We saw it in football, but it definitely makes it painful when you're running out the outfield of people that sound like Italian food. And then Jake Myers is at least playing a great defensive center fielder. We can at least say that.
And again, Myers suffers just from the idea of if anybody else was hitting, I wouldn't care what Jake Myers was hitting, but I have to. Yeah. He's usually batting 5th or 6th.
Yeah, right, totally. Well, Yonder Diaz is keeping the team afloat. Looks like Alvarez is getting rolling again. And then here's hoping that when Bregman comes back, hopefully this week, he doesn't lose. That's what shocked me about him sitting himself, though, Andy, is like he was rolling and was having as good a stretch as he's had in his career. It seems weird to.
I think this is a solution for the early season issues. Last day of spring training, they need to hit him in the elbow with a hammer. Let it swell up really, really good. He has a couple good weeks in April, then he takes the series off.
There you go.
He's tried everything else. We might as well try that.
All right. Well, you and I are going to get out of here, but you and I are back Friday because we're bringing back our show Lone Star yell fight. We're gonna be talking college football's back, man. Where are you now? Excited or like you know?
I really think this people should tune into the show this year so they can watch you and I start to dislike each other greatly by the end of it. Leading up to A&M and Texas playing for the first time in 13, 14 years.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. It's so hard because I don't know if I've gotten older or college football has just changed, but I haven't followed the recruiting stuff like I used to. I haven't, cared about the camp updates as I used to. I'll be into it once game starts, and I'll watch all the games, and I'll keep up with scores and all that kind of stuff. But just right now, I'm just kind of let it happen. The good news for A&M fans is that we had a great College World Series run, and that carried us through a lot of the summer. So we didn't have, the normal 3-month period of woe is me and then building up to, oh, my God, we're going to win the national championship. I don't know if you followed us closely, but since 1939, that hasn't worked out.
No, it hasn't. But I don't think there's a world where you and I start hating each other. And if that happens, we'll do an episode where we bring on a therapist or something. We'll do.
I don't know. It might get snippy.
We'll do couples therapy on the air. But yeah, tune in for that. We're going to talk that a lot of college football and we'll talk no NFL football because you know what? There's nothing more that annoys me more than the NFL offseason. Have they played preseason games? I don't even know.
They have, and I'm a fan of my team's new logo. It doesn't fit with their uniforms. I like the H. Has nothing to do with the uniforms. It looks like somebody took a logo and just, let's put it on this generic uniform. Ta-da.
Well, you know what? You wouldn't be a Houston franchise if you didn't have a period of time with generic uniforms. So
there we go.
There you go. The Rockets did it. The Astros did it. Congrats, Texans. You're finally part of the family. All right, Andy, we're back next week, hopefully with Brian. Until then, man, go Stros.
Go Stros.